Hello, tea friends. We wanted to continue to take deep dives into any of the teas that we release that have educational value. Sometimes we're even choosing the teas because they have educational value, and we want you guys to be able to learn. Of course, all the teas on our website really are there to fundraise, to help build your center, Light Meets Life, so we can open it as soon as possible and start hosting courses again for all of you to come from around the world and learn about tea. And those courses will once again be free as they were in our previous center. So that's the real impetus behind all the teas that we're selling. However, some of them we choose because they have educational value. Some of them we choose because they're just rad teas, sometimes both. A lot of the teas that we're releasing are donated. So a lot of friends are coming to us and saying, look, I don't have any money to help you build your center, but I got some tea, and giving it to us. That's how a lot of the teas got there that are on our site now. So the reason that it's growing is for all of those reasons. This particular tea is both educational and rad. It's pretty unique. It's called Heavenly Rhyme. That's the translation literally of the characters that are on it. So it was given that name by the person who made it. And we'll talk about the rhyme in a minute. This is Heaven and Rhyme. It's a 2007 Bulang cake. And there's a lot to learn about this tea. First of all, it is just an absolutely stunning rad Pu-erh. This is amongst the best that Pu-erh gets. If you want to get better than this, then you got to age this. But this is really amongst the best that Pu-erh gets. But best is a relative term, especially in Pu-erh, which is complicated. And here's where the educational lesson comes in. So when I first started drinking Pu-erh in the 90s, and of course before my age, in the age of my teacher and his teacher, in those times, people really only consumed aged Sheng or Shou. Young Sheng was not really drunk, except to determine if that particular tea was a good candidate for storage. In fact, if you look at the government records of Pu-erh production, I think it's up until like 2004, according to official statistics, the production of Pu-erh tea in Yunnan is a fraction of what it would be by today's standards, because they didn't even include young Sheng Puerh. It was an unfinished product. So they were only measuring Shou, basically. And then, I don't know if they measured aged Sheng at that time, but they weren't really measuring young Sheng because it was an unfinished product. So it was kind of like mash in whiskey, right? It's got to be barreled for some years. And there's even, I think, legal restrictions about that. I believe you have to barrel at least some amount of years before you can sell it. I don't know. I don't drink alcohol, but it's a good example. It's an unfinished product until it's aged. And Pu-erh was all considered that. There was a lot of well-aged Pu-erh around, and it wasn't so crazy expensive like it is now. And of course, aged Pu-erh is better than young Pu-erh. So everybody was drinking that, really. And the only time they would drink young tea is really to choose if it was a good candidate for aging, or to see how it was aging. So you like drinking it on its journey. And that meant that the criteria that were used to evaluate Pu-erh tea were all based on that. But as people have more and more started drinking young Sheng, and there's many good reasons to drink young Sheng. In fact, I had to put my foot in my mouth. I was one of the fools, and this isn't the only time in my life. It was on a weekly basis I'm a fool. And I have to put my foot in my mouth often on a weekly basis. But this was a big time I had to put a foot in my mouth, because I was amongst those who had kind of grown up drinking aged tea. And when the new fad of drinking young tea started, I was like, complaining and writing articles about why it was, it's too cold in terms of traditional Chinese medicine, and it's bitter, and who would, like any old timer, when new things come out, the new music, my dad always said, you'll know you're old when the new music sounds like noise, right? But I had to put my foot in my mouth, because I realized, like all of us, that there are actually many good reasons to drink young Sheng Puerh, and that there are other criteria for evaluating young Sheng Puerh that are different than just its ageability. So there are other ways of evaluating whether a young Sheng is good. If you're going to drink a young Sheng, you use a different set of criteria to decide if that's a good quality young Sheng than you use if you're going to age it. That's just a fact. The other thing that's happened, though, is that as more and more people are consuming young Sheng, the processing of Pu-erh has changed. Now, the processing of Pu-erh changing is more complicated than that, because the process of Pu-erh is also changing as the Pu-erh market grows. And then the quality of life for farmers grows. They get better machinery, they learn more, they're learning the science of tea production. Their tea has higher value to them, so they're investing more heart in their processing of it and caring more about how it's processed. So its processing is changing for other reasons. But one of the factors that is changing the processing of Pu-erh is that the producers know that their consumers are going to drink it young. And so they have shifted their processing more towards that market, towards those who are going to consume it. And so they're processing it along the criteria of quality based on consumption, not based on aging. And that means sometimes the teas that are really good for drinking in terms of Yangsheng are not the best candidates for aging. And sometimes the ones that are the best candidates for aging aren't that good for drinking. So this is just an aspect of Pu-erh that you need to learn about. So this tea is one of what is growing to be a rarer and rarer and rarer type of tea, which is this tea was produced by a dear friend of ours who's a very old-time Pu-erh lover. Going back to 80s, 70s, this person's been around. And so he went to Yunnan and produced this cake of Pu-erh for aging. And it comes from actually old growth trees and it's a blend, but all from Bulang. And it's a blend of old growth trees, some of them eco-arboreal and some of them wild. So it comes from really good quality tea trees and gardens, but it's designed to be aged. And one of the main differences between these, and this isn't a black and white thing. There are teas that are great to consume young and you can age them. This one's really good to drink now, and I had it when it was new in 2007. It was also really great then, even though it's more on the ageable side. So this really is a spectrum and also a matter of some personal taste. But one of the qualities that makes a tea suitable for long-term aging is that it has to be strong. So that's one of the things that shifted in the processing, and also shifted even in the types of trees and things that farmers are seeking out. Is when you're going to drink Yangsheng young, you don't want teas that are sweet and more fragrant and delicious. And so there's a lot of teas being processed. We do tea reviews for several different places and types of tea, and get to drink a lot in the tea reviews that we do. And there's a type of tea in those reviews that we call Pulang, because it's like a Pu-erh that's kind of gone through some more or heavier semi-oxidation. There's other reasons that can happen. Sometimes they pack the leaves too tightly in the bag when they're picking them, or they walk them home and then they go eat dinner and leave them in that bag too long. But other times they're trying to do that intentionally to make the tea more fragrant and sweet and things, because they know people are going to consume it. Whereas if you want to really age a tea long term, the best teas are going to be very strong and bold. And if they're still strong and bold after 15 years, that tea's got the juice to be aged long term. So when you drink a tea in terms of long term aging, you'll know because it'll be bold. And so those who are more coming from the old school that want to age Pu-erh appreciate teas that are very bold and strong. And this tea, Bulang, is that type. This tea has all the qualities that we look for in a tea that we want to age. It's very vibrant. It's very, very strong, both in terms of flavor and aroma, but also in terms of qi. Its energy is very bold, like a runner in a marathon, right? Long-term aging is like a marathon. And so we're 15 kilometers into the marathon, and this one's not tired at all. He's still full of energy and full of spirit and full of juju. The tea liquor is thick and bold and super strong, completely coats your mouth and throat. All the 10 qualities are there very, very viscerally and boom, right in your face. And the energy of this tea is very, very vibrant and very full, which means that, after 13 years, if it's still thus, it's going to go the whole way. And you can drink this now, of course, too, but really the learning lesson here is this: if you're looking for a tea to age from this time period, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better one. than one that was made by somebody who has a lot of experience aging Pu-erh and watching Pu-erh age, who also has really good connections in Yunnan and went there and pressed the cake himself for this intention, and using really good quality leaves. He actually, funny enough, got a hold of the even better material than he was originally able to get, because in 2006 and 2007 there was the bubble burst in Pu-erh and there was a collapse, and some vendor in Beijing had ordered a bunch of Bulang tea and even given a deposit, but then not been able to purchase the tea, and so basically lost the deposit, and the tea became available, and the price dropped, and he was able to then include that in the blend. So one of the teas comes from even better trees than he had originally planned on using. And this was a tea that he himself wanted to create, not just for sale, but for himself to age. And so it's a really good example of what Pu-erh should look like when you're interested in storing it long term. And what old timers really are looking for when you ask them what a good quality Pu-erh tea is all of these things: very bold, very vibrant, full of energy, with a strong bitterness that transforms. So it's not stuck in the bitterness. As you drink it, the bitterness is very strong, but transforms into a sweetness. And that is very much present in this tea. And this tea, interestingly, not only is the liquor very thick, but it has hints of like butter, almost like ghee to me when I taste it. I don't usually like to say tea tastes like this or that, but this one has a real strong like fragrance of butter or ghee to me. And it's very thick and coating, and very bold and energetic. It's very uplifting, and a very, very powerful Pu-erh from some very good trees. So if you're looking for a really great example of what old-timey Pu-erh should be and what old-timers thought was a great Pu-erh, or if you're looking for a cake to age long-term, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better one from this time period. And we're selling cakes and also packets of this. The reason it's called Heavenly Rhyme, the word rhyme is used in Chinese poetically to talk about a tea that basically has all the 10 qualities. I encourage you to go read an article on the 10 qualities of a fine tea from Global Tea Hut, or we have a video on the 10 qualities of a fine tea. But when all the qualities of mouthfeel, when all the 10 qualities are there, the tea is said to rhyme. And you can think about this as it rhymes with our bodies. It rhymes with our spirits. It rhymes with us. It's the hat to our cat. It's the bat to the hat to the cat. And we're the cat, and it's the hat that we put on. So it rhymes to us. It rhymes to our body. In other words, it's in perfect unison. And all those 10 qualities are not only present in this tea, they punch you in the face. They're really like, and strong. So if you're just looking to learn about what a great tea is in terms of ageability, these types of teas that are produced for aging are growing rarer and rarer, because like newcomers would drink this and it's very strong to them, right? So they might be turned off, and the industry is starting to steer towards consumption away from aging. And so if you want to drink and learn about what an old timer would call a really good Pu-erh and what they would be looking for as quality in terms of their Pu-erh that they want to age, this is a great cake for you. Or if you're looking for some Pu-erh to age, you'd be really, really hard pressed from this time period and in this price range to find quality like this. This is a really excellent cake. We certainly will be putting aside some. If you just want to taste, you could also get a taster and just learn with us. Of course, all the proceeds will go to support Building Light Meets Life. We thank you so much for all your support that you've given and will give. Until the next video, stay happy, peaceful, full of joy, and of course, full of tea.